Hey, we're going to talk about the worst skill on each hero and why we think it's the worst. The skill itself may actually not be terrible, but out of all 7 where often you play them, we're going to do it. I'm going to try to do it fairly fast. That way I use my gut reaction rather than sitting on it too terribly long. So let's get to it. Even though I've used it many a times, I'm going to have to say solo. Solo is such a situational gimmick skill on the Jester. It does find its uses, it is useful, it's just I would rather find myself using every other skill and have it on probably before solo. You could argue maybe you solo then finale immediately in the fight, but that still takes the turn too. And I believe you're missing out on a battle ballad or a harvest, and you don't cause the Jester to take all those increased stress damage, reduce his dodge and all that just to potentially kill one enemy. Because if you get on the lower end of finale, not only have you taken one turn to get all this dodge and then drop a finale bomb, you don't even kill somebody, you lose that dodge permanently, and then you're going to lose the dodge from solo. So I think it's his worst skill, not that it's a terrible skill, I just think out of all of them to have on all the time, I just don't see it as being solo. Before we get too much farther in the video, as always, please like, subscribe, and comment if you really like the channel. There is the Patreon in the description. Thank you so much. Leper. The Leper, even though I actually didn't put the skill in the worst, and I maybe somewhat regret it now, I would have to say Withstand. Withstand could be situational. It's 30% protection. You do mark yourself, you get all these bonuses. It could be good for maybe like boss fights. We're getting a good 30% right away. You could have another protection-based trinket on them, get them to 40-50% right away. It's just not my style. I put Purge as actually one of the worst skills in another video. I kinda do and don't stand behind it, but I'd rather have Purge on before Withstand, so do I regret my decisions in that other video? I wouldn't say regret, but it was a tough decision. I just know Withstand has a special place, and because I don't really use either, Purge and Withstand are actually kinda hard to rank, but I usually use Purge way more than Withstand. Therefore, I think Withstand is one of his worst, but it does have its application, so I don't think it's completely terrible. Shieldbreaker. Honestly, the Shieldbreaker doesn't really have any bad skills, but usually she's more blight and melee heavy. Therefore, the skill I'm going to pick is Captivate. It's actually not that terrible if you're going to build for it. My only real quote-unquote beef with it, it's very row dependent. It's 2 and 3 on your side, which is okay, but it's only 2 and 3 on the enemy side. That's actually the part where I kind of find it weird. I mean, it's nice it can hit the 3rd position, but it's not like 1 through 3 or 2 through 4. It's 2 to 3 on both sides. The accuracy is not bad. The blight's pretty good. Damage versus mark. I've used it to kill the hag and stuff, but overall, probably the skill you're not going to see me putting on the Shieldbreaker very often. Hellion. There's definitely one skill in here I use less, but I have a feeling the community may have another option. But my skill that I put on the least, Breakthrough. And the reason why I'm not a huge fan of Breakthrough is it's a nice de-shuffler, but it already does minus 50% damage, not for a huge critical chance either, and then the debuff is 10% damage and 1 speed. So you can't really necessarily use this multiple turns in a row and get that really high damage going. Therefore, Breakthrough is not my favorite. I suspect some people in the community may say Adrenaline Rush, but it does heal, it cures blight and bleed, and gives you all that stuff, so I wouldn't really argue that it's bad. All the other skills are absolutely amazing on her. I would say Breakthrough is definitely one of those where it's like, you know, it might get you out of a pinch, you might use it in a nice shuffle comp, but overall, definitely the skill I put on her the least. The Crusader. The Crusader has no bad skills. We can move on. I'm kidding. There's definitely one skill, and if you've watched my channel, if you know my feelings, it's, well, actually no. You might be surprised. I think it's Bulwark of Light. It's a lot of torch. You mark yourself 30% protection, very reminiscent of the Leper. Now, what some people might say, and I can understand it, but I do use Zealous Accusation way more than use Bulwark. I'm actually a fan of cleave skills. I know in the community people say cleave skills are among some of the worst because they have lower accuracies, they reduce damage, and often they don't have a status effect like the Houndmaster's Hound Harry does. Therefore, people often like to crap on it. I have found Zealous being useful for clearing bodies. We're getting extra criticals and stress healing and all that stuff, so I'd much rather have a Zealous Accusation on before I put on Bulwark of Light. Abomination. His worst skill? transform. I'm kidding. We love transformation abominations. We're not going to do him dirty like that. However, we are going to pick on one skill in particular in his transformation. That's right. Slam. I'm not a huge fan of Slam. Look at that. It's a nice debuff. Minus 6 speed, minus 20 dodge. I just kind of wish it also stunned. Because, I mean, minusing 20 dodge and 6 speed from people in the first 2 positions, not really all that useful, to be honest. I mean, the first 2 positions, I never liked decreasing speed in positions 1 and 2. And my reason for that is they're already slow. And they're usually also lower end of dodge. So making them more slow and less dodgy is practically making the same enemy. Now, the only really good thing about this is you at least knock them back 2. Thus, you do bring up all the 3rd positions to there. But other than that, if this skill had a stun, I would really like it. And I would probably make fun of maybe Manacles without Colors of Madness deal. No, I don't know. He has a lot of good skills. I mean, they're all incredibly useful. I could maybe say Rake because the initial damage is so low. But once again, so yeah, let's just say if Slam would stun, I would then go to Rake. But as it stands now, Slam, hands down, I like using this ability the least. Flagellant. You probably know which one this one is. Let's just say on this list right here, his first 6 abilities are very good, except for Suffer. The only time this is probably super great is Swine God. Other than that, I mean, maybe it comes clutch. You take off a DOT before it kills somebody. But for the most part, out of all of the other skills he has, why would you keep Suffer on as a... Unless you're very fond of a 4th position Flagellant, there's no real reason to have Suffer on. There's so many other great skills on him that if you keep this on, definitely let me know down in the comments why you keep it on and when it saved you. I just know I never put it on. Man at Arms. His worst skill. It's kind of hard. All of his skills are like pretty good. I wouldn't say any of them are phenomenal. Even though he has a riposte, I still wouldn't say that's like his absolute skull crushing best. So it's an odd tie for me. So the one I actually find myself putting the least on, but I still like it on occasion, is Command. And the reason why I like Command is 10 accuracy and 8% crit. It's really good. However, just pick a Jester. You at least get that speed as well. And the 25% damage while guarded, it's kind of the weird generic one where it's like you never really get to utilize that 3rd buff. So it's just 10 accuracy and 8 crit, which is great. That's a free focus ring on everyone essentially. So you can't downplay that. But if I can bellow and make people's dodge less, that's essentially getting accuracy and that decreases the enemy speed. So it's like an offensive battle ballad. Bolster reduces stress, increases your dodge. It's very nice. You obviously got the stun, the riposte, his main weapon bash. So for the most part, I usually find Command being the least used skill on the Man at Arms. Bounty Hunter. This one I have gotten a little bit of controversy, but even though I actually put the one skill as one of the worst skills in the game, for all intents and purposes, what I actually keep on the Bounty Hunter, because in that video of my worst skills, I tried to leave marks out because they're so weird. You could put a lot of marks on as the worst skill because taking the time to mark someone isn't always the best option. But in this scenario, I tell you what, I'm going to give Mark for Death a call out. It does decrease enemy protection by 20% and adds 5 speed to yourself. However, I don't like Mark for Death and the fact that it doesn't do anything. If I'm going to mark, I usually like Come Hither instead. It does kind of the same thing. I know the first 2 positions can't get hit by it, but for the most part, you're always looking to destroy the 3rd position the quickest anyways. So having Come Hither and Mark for Death on and then just collect bounty and something else just isn't doing it in my book. Therefore, Mark for Death is definitely the worst skill for me to have on the Bounty Hunter. Highwayman. I'm going to potentially get into trouble. I don't know. I actually really love all the skills on the Highwayman. And I'm between 2. Yeah, 2 or 3 that I really don't. I'm a very generic Highwayman user. Most people would say Grape Shot Blast is utter garbage. And the only reason why I wouldn't say it's utter garbage is that 8% chance to receive is very good. But for all intents and purposes, it's tough because Vendetta, I really don't use it even for bosses. So it's my least used skilled. However, is it a bad skill? I guess I would say no, because the increases are pretty good and it does last the battle. So this is a super tough one. It's between these two, but I will say Grape Shot Blast solely because it has a crit modifier and bad accuracy. If one of those was better, I think I'd probably still go back to Vendetta. I know that irks some people. Sorry, Tracking Shot, not Vendetta. But I will admit, Grape Shot Blast has some accuracy issues, and the minus crit modifier is pretty brutal. So we'll say Grape Shot Blast. Even though I love me some Range Highwayman, it does take a lot of love to get that thing to a pretty respectable status. So for that reason, the amount of work it takes to get it to like really strong, we're going to put as his worst skill. Occultist. So I like my cleave abilities. However, I find Abyssal Artillery kind of bleh. It's decent in the Cove, but that's about it. Anywhere else, it's pretty mediocre damage. You might as well move in third position, pull out a Sacrificial Dagger, and get that massive 13% critical chance. So Abyssal Artillery, it's a cleave ability, more damage against Eldritch, but the minus 33% and only 4% crit modifier is just not doing it for me. So definitely Abyssal Artillery on the Occultist. I'll put it on if he's fourth position, but more recently I've actually been finding myself using Weakening Curse and also Vulnerability Hex. Therefore, fourth position Occultist tends to have these three skills right here, and then Demon Pool. Vestal. The Vestal has a couple of skills I don't really use all that much, and this is where we're going to get into the, what's it called, the Bonk Vestal or whatever. Alright, Mace Bash, Hand of Light, hardly use either. These are the 5 skills I usually use. People say use Illumination. I actually like Illumination on a third position Vestal because it can decrease dodge by 30, increase torch by 10, and de-stealth. Very good. Accuracy is a little desirable. It could be a little higher. However, the amount of times I've rotted people out of stealth with this and decreased their accuracy on those high dodging people in the back, super good. So I actually like Illumination. These 5 skills right here. I will say it's Hand of Light on the sole fact that at least Mace Bash you can use right away. This way you have to buff it. It doesn't even last the whole fight. It does minus 50% damage. I mean, obviously it does more against Unholy. But honestly, Hand of Light is just kind of bleh. Also, can we take a moment to respect the Houndmaster game? What am I doing? 6 of them? Good. Gravy. I got a fleet of them. Holy cow. Alright, anyways. Houndmaster's worst ability. I mean, at the end of the day, the joke really is, I don't know if he's got a worst ability. I've used all of these to decent success. There's only 2 skills I put on the least, and not to say I haven't had decent success with them. Guard Dog is great for protecting people, very situational, so I don't want to say it's bad. It's also plus 20 dodge. I would have to say it's the mark. It's kind of a cop-out, but really, his stun's great. His self-heal, hey man, it's a self-heal almost anywhere. You have to respect that. It gets you off death's door. Guard Dog can save people's allies and also make sure he doesn't get hit. Maybe you're not a fan of Cry Havoc, but I've used Cry Havoc very well before, and definitely well before I do Target Whistle. Minus 30% protection at 170% base chance is phenomenal though, but once again, I'd rather someone set up the Houndmaster than he do it, so this is the skill I use the least, and I think it's the least good, even though it's still pretty good to be honest. Alright, Grave Robber, if you watched my video, you will know that I do not like Toxin Trickery. It's more of a cheese skill, to be honest, if you want to just get that heavy dodge, if you're using it to do, like I said, dodge comms, if you're trying to dodge the Brigand Pounder, if you're absolutely, for some reason, on your last legs, you need to get rid of DOT and make sure you don't get hit, sure. But for the most part, Flashing Daggers would be my second one. Once again, damage reduction, crit modifier reduction, bleed resist, who really cares? But I would much rather have Flashing Daggers over Toxin Trickery pretty much any day. So therefore, Toxin Trickery into Flashing Daggers. Antiquarian. Here we go. I made a few mistakes in my worst video here. The Antiquarian skills are actually very useful, and I've used them all relatively about the same. But there is one skill in particular, and since I don't have the same parameters as my worst skills video, Nervous Stab. I mean, it's meh. I mean, it's just, this at least hits every position. Some DOT, it's real nice. This gets you back to, get down You know, I could argue get down. It's just so, I mean, it's a strong tie between these two. If you have a non-shuffle if your party cannot shuffle, get down could be good if you got surprised. It's also a potential cheese comp 25 dodge, so if you want to like really cheese dodge something, it's at least useful there. Nervous stab overall, it's not all that great, so I would say it's a heavy tie between get down, nervous stab, but I could see get down being more of a cheese comp than nervous. Now, if you want to buff up your melee damage and get the Antiquarian to doing respectable, you can maybe say get down, but these two are definitely the ones I usually don't find myself having on very long. Plague Doctor. Plague Doctor is one of those other great characters where, man, I would hate to put a worse skill on here, to be honest. They're all so... The Plague Doctor is probably one of the more complete classes in the game in terms of skill. I don't think there's really a skill set she can have that is terrible, but that's not the point of this video. We're going to pick a worse skill. And if I had to pick a worse skill, these are the two I find myself using the least, but does not mean they are not good. I love me Incision, and I'd rather have that on than Embalming Vapors. Now, I know that's crazy to say because you're like, it's 25% damage and 5 speed. I absolutely get it. I begrudgingly pick this ability just because of how good everything else is. And the only reason why I pick Embalming Vapors as bad is because it actually doesn't give accuracy. So certain characters won't, even though they'll get faster, more damage, Leper and Crusader, they may not actually have the accuracy to make up for all that extra speed and damage you're giving them. I mean, I'm trying to make it sound bad, but it's really not a bad skill. Incision, like if you're thinking it's Incision, honestly, it's pretty good. It's a 9% crit modifier. There's a couple of good trinket sets with it. The bleed's 4. So if you like a 3rd position Plague Doctor, it's really good. If you like 4th, obviously you're putting on Embalming over that. So it's kind of a tie between these two, but it's definitely not because the skills are bad. But off the top of my head, I'm going to use Embalming, even though Embalming Vapors can be cheese via Color of Madness. For all intents and purposes, we're going to say this one's the worst skill. And then the pseudo-opposite problem of the Plague Doctor is the Musketeer Arbalest, where there's a lot of skills where I could kind of go, you know, yeah, it's like that could be better. Buckshot is pretty bad, and honestly, so is Sidearm. These two abilities, and I mean, there's, oh my gosh, dude, it's like these 4 abilities right here, they hurt my brain. I know people like Sidearm when there's only one person left alive. I'm not a huge fan. It increases your speed, which I actually find worse because that means you're usually going before marks. Decreases your damage, not a high crit modifier, and that accuracy is terrible, and you can't even choose who you hit. So I'm still gonna pick Sidearm even over Buckshot. I know minus is 50%, but at least you can hit the first 2 positions. If you have decently considerable damage increasing, that might be respectable. I mean, the mark's really bad as well because you're probably never going to be marking yourself. I mean, I'm just trashing the whole entire Arbalest and Musketeer at this point. I'm not even going for worst skill. I actually don't mind Smokescreen or suppressing fire on the Arbalest. I know it's kind of a very weird out there skill and ability. But are you reading that? Minus 20 accuracy and minus 19% crit. If you put on like a 20% debuff trinket, that's a 160% chance for people in the back row to be doing 20 less accuracy and 19% critical. You will probably never get critically struck. Actually, I don't think you should get critically struck by a stress-based ability again. That's super powerful. So I actually like Smokescreen. But these 3 abilities right here, I mean, it's crapshoot. The only reason why I'm not talking about Skeet Shot or Rallying Flare, I mean, it's actually pretty dang good, to be honest. It's probably one for better abilities. It's the stress is kind of negligible, but adds a torch, brings people out of stealth, clears marks, clears stuns, perfect for a boss. Therefore, Skeet Shot's really good. Obviously, Aim Shot's pretty good. Obviously, we want to do the increasing on the heals. Those are about the 3 you'll probably have on every single Arbalest Musketeer, and then it's pick your poison territory. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think are the worst skills, or at least used skills. And definitely, as always, I can trust you guys in the community to let me know where the heck I was wrong. Like and subscribe below.